I'll stick on for like the first 10-15 minutes, mainly for anyone who isn't too familiar with Faceware. I wanted to just provide a high level overview on just our portfolio, some of the key workflows that our solutions are used for. And then obviously we have Nick here who can walk you guys through a demo of that, as well as the whole personal learning edition promotion we have. As many of you guys know, MetaHumans launched, it seems, just 2 months ago, but time flies by so fast. And I think that literally changed the industry overnight, in that a lot of folks previously just didn't have access to high quality photoreal assets, and that's always kind of been a barrier specifically for facial tracking. So again, now that everyone has access to MetaHuman Creator, they have access to creating their own rigs, photoreal assets. We want to kind of open up the gates here for everyone with this personal learning edition. So if any of you guys haven't downloaded, I highly encourage you to. It's 6 months of free Faceware Studio, which is our real-time tracking software. The Faceware's been around for a little over 8 years. We actually spun out from Image Metrics, which is a machine learning research arm to Faceware, and they actually provide our SDK and all of the research that goes into our facial tracking solutions. We're widely used in AAA games, film, television, academia, you name it. But what's crazy is now with MetaHumans, you'll start to see more of our stuff with even AR, VR training, simulation applications. There's a lot more emerging applications that are going to happen between Faceware and the use of MetaHumans. Oh, having been around for a little under a decade, we've touched quite a few things that you'll recognize. We were widely used for The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which won an Academy Best Visual Effects Award. We were used for a weekly web blog series for Barbie that went viral years ago. We were part of the first video-based player-to-player in-game chat for Star Citizen, the first photoreal face replacement in VR, and also working with some of the best storytellers around, like Disney, to execute their first live chat. So a lot of first in the industry tied to Faceware, and really cool to kind of see how things develop over the industry and over the course of time. So we're being used currently in 1,700 studios across the globe, over 225 schools and institutions in 75 countries. So definitely a global presence there if you ever end up working for a studio that's in another country. Most of the time there is some reseller presence in most parts of the globe selling Faceware or providing some level of support. So product overview, we have both hardware and software solutions. In terms of the hardware, we actually have two things here. One, our software is all based on a single camera video feed. So the key here is you can actually use it with any standalone camera, like a webcam, camera on a tripod. But again, on the flip side, for high quality production level capture, we do have the wireless, which is the Mark IV, which is a wireless streaming solution that actually has time code integration and take naming integrations with Xsense, Vicon, and OptiTrack through our Shepherd operator software. We also have an Indie headcam solution that's paired with a GoPro. But on the capture side, we have Faceware Studio and Analyzer Retargeter. So with Faceware Studio for real-time streaming, that's the one that's part of the Personal Learning Edition promotion. You're basically either capturing pre-recorded video or live streaming footage through Faceware Studio, which then has a Glassbox plugin into Unreal, so you can view your characters in real time. On the flip side, a lot of times folks will use this in conjunction with our Creation Suite, which is Analyzer and Retargeter. And the big difference here is with Analyzer and Retargeter, you have more custom animation controls to fine tune your characters. And especially because accuracy is such a subjective term, a lot of folks, when they're doing high-end VFX, blockbuster, or final production, they always put their data through some level of an Analyzer Retargeter workflow. And Analyzer is where you're getting those landmarks, fine-tuning your placement of those landmarks, creating those training frames for your character, and then applying it onto your rig in Retargeter, which is plugged into Maya, Mobu, or 3ds Max. So again, these are kind of the core workflows, the core pieces of our portfolio that we support. I'm going to now just kind of throw it over to Nick, who can now show you kind of the run through of Faceware Studio, which is kind of the big piece of our marketing push here at Faceware. This released literally a year ago, and the biggest pieces of this versus any older live capture software you might have seen from Faceware is one, it is single click calibration, so you can quickly get set up. It's really turnkey. There is neural net initialization recovery, so less jitter. when you're capturing. And also, it does incorporate our latest jaw tracking technology. So that jaw tracking technology is kind of the biggest piece of the puzzle to what makes Faceware. We can actually track the upper and lower teeth with your mouth closed. And if you do decide to do any testing alongside this and AR kit, you will notice some more fine-tuned jaw movements that you're able to capture with your cheeks as like a big difference compared to AR kit. So again, you guys have this free software. You also have Nick here today, and I'm really excited to kind of throw this to Nick and have him give you a full demo. Oh, this is MetaHuman Nick.
Yeah, well, it's not really me, but it's a MetaHuman anyway. So yeah, so what you guys are seeing is Faceware Studio is on the left, and in the background is Unreal Engine with a MetaHuman loaded in. And this is showing Faceware Studio's live connection into Unreal Engine. So anything that is happening right here is getting applied to the MetaHuman through Faceware's basically live transmission here. So I'm a little disoriented because again, I've kind of reset my studio here. So I have what you're looking at is my PC screen, which is streaming to my Mac, which is on Zoom. So, okay.
Donald's in, so it's all good.
Okay, awesome. So, yeah, so this is Faceware Studio, and this is the main tool from Faceware itself, and it's the one that you get with the Indie, Personal Learning Edition key right now. And now you can have a few different possible sources in terms of the video for this. So you can use live video, and that could be any camera, webcam, deck link, capture board, etc. Or you can use a media file. And the media file could be a video like an MP4, or it could be an image sequence. So in this case, I'm actually using a PNG image sequence. It's around 100 and something frames long. And you can specify the frame rate. And it's really important, of course, that this matches whatever the frame rate was in the original video. So to make this video, I just set up a standard SLR camera. I turned it on its side on a tripod, stood in front of the wall, and I said, you should try this. And so that's what's going on here. And then I converted that video into an image sequence. This is my feature film background. I worked on Benjamin Button. So the feature film industry, before computers could really well handle video files, was built up on using individual files per frames. It was, old days were Cineon files, etc. These days, EXRs. So that's just my kind of ingrained workflow. So since I'm using the image files, I can hit play, and this loops around pretty quickly. Couple things that happen here is that Faceware is looking for landmarks on the face, right? So this is a fixed camera on a tripod. And so it's going to be looking for the landmarks of the eyes, eyebrows, features of the nose, the flaring of the nostrils, the mouth. And what we don't see a highlight marker of, but it's also deriving jaw position, right? And then when it's tracking all of these things, it's applying it to this is kind of the default Faceware 3D model face. And so this is kind of like your checksum against what you're seeing in your video. So ideally, if you're looking at your video and you're looking at the Faceware 3D face, then whatever happens to this Faceware 3D face will ultimately be transmitted to whatever other tool you have on the receiving end. In our case, it's mostly MetaHuman. Before this will actually track onto this face, you do have to kind of tell Faceware, hey, this is a neutral pose. So I did that already, and that's why we're seeing this tracking and all. So I could do that any number of times. So here I am. If this was the first time I just opened this file, this button would say calibrate neutral pose. But since I've done that once, it just says recalibrate. So after you've loaded in your media, you'll want to make sure that you find a neutral pose. And of course, that also implies that you'll need a neutral pose in your file. So it could be, if you edit, with an image sequence, you could always throw a neutral pose as a first frame if you need to, but you want to make sure you capture a neutral pose with your talent. And that's just like face relaxed, looking straight ahead, not looking up or down, left or right. You're just looking straight into the camera. And that is effectively your neutral pose. And so once that's clicked, that calibrates the neutral pose of the Faceware human to the actual, in my case, lack of talent. So from there, any differential between the neutral pose and the current pose will then be applied to the Faceware, right? So if I close my eyes, that's going to close the eyes of the Faceware model. If I open my jaw, it's going to open the jaw of the Faceware model. And all of this is driving, what would be a standard face rig. You can see over here, there's an animation tuning panel, and it really shows you each one of the controls that is being driven by this tracking result, right? So the eyebrows, brow down on the left side, brow down on the right side, brow up, etc. So in the neutral pose, all of this is 0. And if I raise my eyebrows, then brow up is going to increase. If I lower my eyebrows, brow down is going to increase. And so all of these values are ultimately what Faceware is transmitting. Now, one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that the default for Faceware Studio is to optimize for real time. So basically, it's going to cache the images and drop them down to this really, really baseline low resolution. Most computers can handle the full resolution just fine these days. So you could turn that off. And now it's going to be tracking on, in this case, I was, just barely HD, 1280 by 720. I guess another note is that Faceware can reorient that video. So this is what the actual original video looked like out of my camera because I had it turned on its side. And so you can orient that with these controls right here. And then, now that I'm properly oriented, everything's being tracked fine. So, that's how the tracking works and how that's set up. One other note here is that between the animation tuning and motion effects, you have the ability to essentially attenuate and alter the values that are coming out of Faceware. So if I feel like, for example, my jaw is actually more open than the Faceware jaw, well, then I could go in here and attenuate the Faceware jaw result. So let's see, I could find that, scrolling this down, head group, mouth group, there we are. Jaw left, jaw open, right? So this is the value right now. And I have a difficult time here because my Faceware, and I'm sorry, my Zoom window's in front of this, but let me try and move. There we are. Can I minimize that? There we go. All right. There we go. Okay. Trying to find a nice place to put this Zoom window. All right. So jaw open, here's the current value. If I want this jaw to open more, I can just put in a multiplier here. So let's say I want to do 125%. And so now that jaw, you can see this is the output and versus where it was before. So if I change that back to 100, that you can see this was the default. So essentially this is a multiplier. If I am getting too dramatic of a result, of course I can put a value below 100%. And then there's also the ability to do an offset. So that's really in the motion effects, right? So if I go over here to motion effects, I can add a new effect. I can select a primary control. Let's say I want to go ahead and I want the jaw to be open extra all the time. Like even when my mouth is closed, I want it to be open. Look for the jaw control here. There we are, jaw open. and I'll select an effect. And in this case, you can clamp it so it doesn't go beyond a certain value. You can increase it, you can reduce it. And these are whole number values instead of multipliers, or you can offset. So I'm going to choose offset, and I'm just going to, do a 0.25 here and confirm. So that should open it up a bit more by 25%. And you'll see that even when my mouth closes, this jaw is open, well, by exactly 0.25. So these are things that you can't do with Live Link Face, by the way, and that's that adjusting the output that's being tracked to remapping the values a bit. And so that's one of the nice features of all of this. So really, I think that covers 90% of what's in here inside the Faceware Studio itself. The final bit, of course, is that you want to stream that value out to the network so that another software can tune into it. So it's streaming, in this case, on port 802. You can set this to whatever value you want. 802 is the default. Another interesting note is you could have multiple computers. If you have enough licenses of Faceware Studio, you could have multiple live talent actors streaming their video into different computers, and each Faceware Studio could be broadcasting on another port. And then in Unreal Engine, you could have multiple metahumans, each one listening to different ports and different IP addresses. And therefore, you could drive multiple metahumans in a single Unreal scene using multiple copies of Faceware Studio. So it's just a matter of the port channel and, of course, the source IP address. I think that pretty much covers the Faceware Studio side in terms of tracking the data and setting up the transmission and the tuning and all of that. Any questions on any of that? Yeah, go for it.
How's it going, man?
Hey.
I had a question. So I've been playing around with Faceware. It's awesome. I've been using a lot of MP4 or MOV files. Is there a way to play the audio as well, though?
Not inside Faceware Studio.
I didn't think so.
So it's just tracking the frames in the video, and so I don't believe it's even decoding the audio.
Okay.
A workflow that I'm not set up to demonstrate here, but what I would do, I usually use a post-production workflow. So, again, I filmed this. I'm using an offline copy, right? The PNG sequence. I'll record this in Unreal Engine, and I'll be looking for timing cues like the blinking eyes, for example. And a lot of times when I'm working in this workflow, I'll deliberately blink my eyes and even make a pop sound with my mouth so that if I'm recording, on secondary audio, etc., I'll have visual and audio cues for synchronization.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then I can bring in that image sequence on an image plane in Unreal Engine and, basically line up on sequencer a playback of the face animation with the audio track and the image track from the video, and then go further in pushing the animation, because there are a few things that are in the MetaHuman rig that Faceware is not tracking. It's not driving. One of the ones is like sticky lips. Unreal Engine's MetaHumans has a sticky lips feature so that, you can see when I say the word you, for example. I keep trying to use the wrong mouse. So when I say the word you can see in the video, my lips are sticking together here, but that's not being reflected in the MetaHuman. So on the, or not the MetaHuman, the Faceware face. So over on the Unreal Engine side, after I've recorded this face performance, I could go back into that recording and then add in the keyframes that I want to get, like the sticky lips going, and maybe, the mouth protrusions, maybe the scrunching of the chin. Some of the other things that, Faceware doesn't track that are happening here. I'm saying you should try this. And one of the things that's interesting is that the word should, it's not reflected in my mouth. Like I don't move my mouth for the word should, but my neck flexes. Like right there, this is the word should. You should try this. And that's not tracked, of course, because it's not the face, that's the neck. MetaHumans have rig controls for this, so you can flex the neck and things like that. So a lot of those things I'll go back in and edit in the MetaHuman rig as layered keyframes on top of the recorded. But this is great because this gets you like a mile down the road where you've got the jaw tracking in place. Like usually in lip sync animation, one of the first things you do is you lay in your jaw keyframes. You start, getting your lips open and closed and those kinds of things in place. You want your eyes. All of these, core aspects of the expression are being driven by Faceware. And so at that point, it's a matter of just tuning all of those extra sweetening elements that are in the MetaHuman rig to really leverage all of them. So yeah, that's my own approach anyway.
Another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I've got a ton. I'm a casting director by default, and so I've got thousands of hours of actor auditions that I've been playing around with self-tape style, like blue screen, punching in, keying, like just getting to as close to their face as possible. Sometimes they, they'll do like a head movement here, which obviously loses tracking in this, like
if they go really dramatic. Yeah.
If they go really, and some of them are really, going big. Is there any way to, there's no way to like punch that in Faceware. That would have to be done in Unreal, right?
Right. Because you would want to animate those
couple
values.
Drop frames. Yeah.
So once Faceware loses track, then there's no way to set keyframes here in Faceware Studio and have them sent over to Unreal. So that would be basically transmitted. I believe if Faceware loses tracking, then we could force that to happen here by doing this. Okay. Yep. There we go. So basically the Faceware head goes to neutral pose. So what'll end up happening is the MetaHuman, just going to go dead, and then it'll pop right back as soon as the tracking
retracts it.
Retracts, right? So then you'll need to keyframe animate in between those values.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I had a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So Faceware, it definitely needs to use the MetaHuman rig inside the head. Is that correct?
Well, Faceware Studio can actually drive other software. I mean, ultimately, all of this data is being transmitted out of a WebSocket. And so any software that can connect to that WebSocket and decode that information being streamed can then put these values to use. So if you wanted to, you could create a rig in Maya that would, and a script that would essentially tune into this over an IP socket, just kind of the way that, Quixel Bridge will export data that's over a WebSocket. But you'd have to code that. If you've got those TD skills, more power to you. You would have to put that together. Actually, and I do think that Faceware, correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but I think there is a Motion Builder plugin that's free, and I forget if there's a Maya plugin as well.
So there's a Unity, Unreal, and a Mobu plugin for Faceware Studio.
Right. Okay.
For Analyzer, we have Maya, Mobu, and Max.
Okay.
Analyzer Retargeter.
Because what I actually have, I have a LiDAR scan of a musician who's recorded, and we filmed her with dots all over her face. So we filmed her with quite a few reference points, but I haven't generated a rig. All I have is the LiDAR and the footage. Is that something that I could still put through Faceware?
So again, you can put the facial performance capture through Faceware, but the target model, whatever target model is being driven, will need a fully capable rig. You're going to be limited by whatever rig. So if you just have a LiDAR scan and it's not rigged in any way, then that's what you got, right? So it's you can't repose it. So ultimately, Faceware Studio is transmitting data under these names. Eyes look right. And that value is a floating value from 0 to 1. And each one of these little graphs is a floating point value that runs from 0 to 1. And I've never bothered to count this. It looks like there's, something like 30 to 50 different values that it's tracking and outputting. And then with MetaHuman, Glassbox has set up a plugin that maps these values to the control rig for MetaHuman. The Mobu plugin and the Unity plugin, those are going to tune into this, and you'll get those individual values. You'll get mouth narrow left 0 to 1, but then it's up to you to then map that to whatever it is that you would drive with that. It might be a blend shape, right? So if you have a blend shape for mouth left, you're going to want to drive that blend shape with this value coming in. And so you would have to set up you have to set up the rig, and you have to set up the mappings. And that's the amazing thing with MetaHuman. I mean, again, on Benjamin Button, there were years of research before the production on that show even began. And then even then, there were still more years of production and refinement and research and development. And now just like Epic's like, oh, here's MetaHumans and it's free, So, all that years of research is just done for you, and you can configure the look of the MetaHuman with that MetaHuman creator. And certainly it's limited in its initial version, but the amount of control you have, this is coming from someone who's been using like iClone and Daz 3D and, oh, wow, Autodesk Character Creator, all of these previous character creation tools just didn't have the level of depth and all of the permutations of facial adjustments, and there's normal maps that are being adjusted on the fly, driven by that rig, and all of that mathematics is already done for you. And so then on top of that, to have a Faceware Studio be able to drive that, out of the box, it's amazing. So if it were me, and you have this musician, if I had this musician and I had all this video of let's say her face performance and all, I would probably go into MetaHuman Creator and try to sculpt and build out a MetaHuman that looked as close as possible to her. And because then that will come out fully rigged, ready to be used. And Faceware will drive that rig from those facial performances if you have those videos, and you can track them and get them into this kind of a format. Is it difficult to get an exact match? Probably. It's going to take some refinement and time, but the number of miles down the road that you will have traveled at that point very quickly is really phenomenal. So that's where I'm seeing all of this come into play.
Okay. What's the cost of this software going to be after the license or after the trial?
You're asking for state secrets.
There's only 8 people on the call, 7 people.
So for now, there's a couple of different pricing models that exist currently. One is the commercial model, which is $2,340 for a single seat. There's also the academic model, where we sell it for $2,150 for a 3-year license if you are a student or instructor at an academic university. However, because the personal learning edition is targeted towards evangelizing adoption across small studios, independent creators, we are assessing an alternative pricing model that's going to be offered towards the indie creator market shortly after this promotion that I cannot say. So just trust that with the goal of evangelization and opening this up and truly democratizing facial capture, we're on the same page with Epic here in trying to offer something at a sustainable price point. So there will be more to come after the promotion. I just cannot share it now.
I get it. Thank you. Cool.
So I figured I'd show really quickly, the Unreal Engine side of this to make sure that you're able to receive all of that information in a metahuman. Now, most of what's here right now is what comes into Unreal Engine from Quixel Bridge when you export a metahuman from Bridge into Unreal Engine. So I'm not going to go into that portion of it. What I'm going to focus on is, getting a metahuman set up to receive the data from Unreal Engine. So one of the things is that Unreal Engine only receives the data when it's actually, running, essentially simulating it would be a video game if it wasn't, virtual production, right? So right now I'm actually running the simulation so that Unreal Engine is actively tuning into the Faceware transmission. And that's why we've got a pose for this particular metahuman. For the moment, I'm just going to stop that. So now that I'm no longer simulating or playing in the engine, the metahuman is going to go to its neutral pose. And there's a couple setup items that need to happen in order to be able to set up the Glassbox plugin. So you'll have to download the Glassbox plugin, and you get a license with that with the PLE offer through Faceware. It's got its own installer, and once it's installed, you'll just go into your project settings your plugins in Unreal Engine, your plugins list. And it's, I'm searching for the word live, and there's live client. This is the Glassbox plugin. It gets enabled. So again, I'm not going to go through the nitty gritty of running an installer and clicking the enabled checkbox, but there it is, right? So now that puts the software necessary to tune into the Faceware transmissions into Unreal Engine. So now you can receive the data, but the next thing is that you need to be able to apply that data to a metahuman rig. And one step in that is that there is a zipped folder that you'll download from Faceware, I believe, right? And that folder is called Motion Logic. And is that still like in a Dropbox folder? Is that right, Karen? Mm-hmm. It's like a Dropbox link or something, right?
Yeah, we currently have it on our knowledge base. If you go to our knowledge base and click on Faceware Studio and then getting started with Metahuman, it'll have the full, all the links to download all those files from Dropbox.
Yeah. So essentially, it's just a folder. It's just a file directory. It's called Motion Logic. Inside it, the files are the maps, effectively curves, animations, everything that maps the values coming off of Faceware Studio onto the control rig of metahumans. And curves are basically, of course, mathematical curves that translate the zeros and ones coming in from Faceware into the appropriate slider values for the metahuman control rig. So that folder has all of that, motion logic in it. And so with all of that done, the final piece to the puzzle is then to go into your metahumans folder, take the metahuman that you've gotten from Bridge, you right click and create a child blueprint class, right? So effectively Unreal Engine, when it compiles a multi-component actor effectively that you're going to put into your scene, it's called a blueprint actor. And creating a child basically inherits everything about this, but lets you edit it without being destructive to the original. So in this case, I right clicked, create a child blueprint, and then the child blueprint existed. What I'll do is actually demonstrate the steps here. Is I'll right click, I'll create a child, and I'll just call this demo for now. And this is still the default metahuman. And if I drag and select and put this guy out here in the scene and have him selected, over here is the details panel that tells me everything that's on this selected metahuman. And there's a couple things we just need to add here. One is that this metahuman needs a component to receive the Faceware data. So you just click Add Component, type in the word Faceware to kind of filter this list. And there's Faceware Live. This is one of the components that's basically part of the motion logic and the Glassbox plugin. I think this is actually the Glassbox plugin itself right here. So clicking on that adds this to the MetaHuman. And now this is essentially going to watch an IP address. In this case, it's the local machine and a port for incoming data from the Faceware Studio. So that's what this component does. And this is basically your radio receiver receiving that transmission. Then we just need to say what we're going to use from that data on this MetaHuman. Whoops, undo that. Wrong keyboard, undo. There we are. I need to select my whole MetaHuman here. There we are. There, all right. Okay, so with this guy, what I'm going to do is have his face be driven by Faceware. So I select the face, and right here is how the face is animated. By default, this Face Anim BP, this is part of MetaHumans. The way animation blueprints work is they can receive animation data from any number of places depending on how they're configured. This one's the default for MetaHumans, and it doesn't respond to Faceware Studio. So if I run Faceware Studio and I'm transmitting my data, then over here in Unreal, and I hit simulate, even though this guy's tuned in to the data, he's not moving like this one is because I haven't applied a blueprint to the face to actually apply the incoming animation data to that face. So I'll stop the simulation. This guy's face. Instead, I'm going to use the Faceware, which is FW blueprint. So I select this, type in FW to filter, and here is FW MetaHuman face. So with this on here now, this blueprint basically receives the data from Faceware and applies it to the face. So if I hit play now, both of these guys are moving. And so that's everything that you really need to do in order to animate that face with Faceware. The only other thing that is optional that you may want to do is also apply a Faceware blueprint to the body so that the head will move with any head movement in the tracking. So this is FW, MetaHuman body, is now that blueprint for that body. And now in theory, now you can see this head's moving a little bit. I should have moved my head a little bit more in my demo video, but anyway, there we go. So that's everything that you need to do to drive this. And effectively, this is happening live. So if I was feeding live video into the Faceware Studio, that live video would be tracked and would be driving this character. Any questions on that?
Is that fairly straightforward to set up the live video into Faceware Studio?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll just stop this for a second. Basically, I don't have a video source plugged into this machine yet, but you just click live and then you'll get a drop-down list of any available video sources on your machine. So you could select your webcam if you wanted to, and that video should appear here. And again, you'll still have all of these controls for rotations and such, as well as your resolution. Frame rate instead, though, will be inherited from the incoming camera signal. So one note, optimization-wise, in this demo, I'm running Faceware and Unreal on the same machine. You will get better performance in general, if Faceware is running on a different machine, because they're, both of these tools are competing for the same CPUs and GPUs, and Faceware Studio does lean into both devices. So it's using CPU threads, it's using GPU threads, and of course, so is Unreal Engine with all its metahumans. And if your metahuman has, a groom and hair, all of that stuff is hitting the same machines. So you can get much better performance from this if Faceware Studio is running on a different machine on your network. And of course, the only adjustment you'll make is in the Faceware Live component of your metahuman, you would just set this IP address and port to be appropriate for whatever other computer on your network was running Faceware.
Do you know if there's any way that you can turn off the, like say the graphics in Faceware Studio if you kind of don't need that to render itself?
It's actually using the graphics for that. Well, I mean, basically, this is like hardly anything. What it's using the GPU for is its machine learning algorithms that do the tracking.
Right.
So it's hitting this.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's using the CPU for a lot of its mathematics threading and importing the imagery itself, right? But then it hits the GPU because of it's using machine learning systems to do the analysis itself. So this little bit of graphics is like nothing on top of all of that. I suppose you could make this really small. Yeah, you see, I'm only getting like 14 frames a second right now, because and that's mainly because I'm running Unreal Engine, and you know, the video you're seeing of me is also running in Unreal Engine over here. So all of this is happening all on the same machine right now. So yeah, that's a lot for my little 5-year-old machine. So the one last thing to note is that the standard way of recording all of this in Unreal Engine is using the take recorder. So we hit play, and this is simulating, and I guess I should actually hit play over here. Here we go. All right, so this is going through its paces. In Unreal Engine, you can go to Cinematics and open up Take Recorder. And we don't need the sequencer right now. This is Unreal Engine's internal live recording tool. So whatever you want to record, you put into the Take Recorder, and then you hit the record button, and it'll record whatever animation is happening on your asset, right? So if I select this guy, I can say add him as a source from actor, right? And there it is. Now the record button activates. Now, right now, by default, it's recording anything and everything, including visibility. It would actually spawn this guy. Now, some of this stuff is overkill. So I'm actually going to unselect a lot of this stuff. I'm not doing any translations on the roots. I don't care about the visibility. I might as well, I don't even need the body to be recorded. I do want the face, right? So I'm going to check the face. And this is now tracking well, I don't need the visibility. I do want the animation track. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and record the whole thing just to be safe. But this is basically anything that's happening to the face is going to get recorded by this take recorder. Fingers crossed I don't blow up anything here. Here we go. So I hit record. I get a 3, 2, 1. And there we go. You should try this. All right. So I hit stop. And now this is going to take a little while. Oh, not too long. All right. So at this point, that animation just got recorded. So I'm going to stop simulating. Let's get rid of the take recorder. Stop this. And if I go to content, over here in cinematics is where that recording went to. It's just this folder that if you didn't have it before, Take Recorder will create it for you. And then here's our takes. And here's today, right? Today's the 16th. Yep. And here's a scene. And in here is all my animations. And this is the head animation that I just recorded. So here's the rub. This guy that I just recorded, his animation is being driven by the Faceware blueprints. So I can't apply these animations to him without reconfiguring where his animation is being driven from. So usually what I do just to deal with this is I go into my metahumans and I'll just take my original metahuman and put it out into the scene because it's already configured to be driven by the sequencer. So this right here is my unaltered original metahuman out of Bridge from right here. Now, does that make sense before I go on? Right. So that these guys, these have been altered. Yeah. Those are the children. And so they're configured to be animated by Faceware, and they won't be animated by Sequencer. So this guy's, he can be animated by Sequencer. So I'm just going to go ahead back now into my cinematics. And then here's my face animation. Fingers crossed I remember how to do this correctly. I'm just going to go right click and create a level sequence. And double click that. Huh. There we go. All right, got it, finally. All right. So this is the animation for that head. Okay, so we finally got that going. So what I want to try to do is be able to have that animation on a different character. So I guess I'll have to do, that'll have to be a demo for another day. There's a step in here. I must not have had something checked correctly when I did the take recorder, but effectively what we're doing is this take is baked onto that head. I probably needed to uncheck spawn so that I could make sure that it would apply to anything I already had. One of the things that's important though that we were able to do, which is really handy though, the big part of this that I wanted to show is by selecting this, I've got this animation going, right? I want to put that animation on the control rig so that I can edit it further. So I can right click and bake to control rig. So I'm going to do the facial control rig. I'm not going to reduce keys. Keep the tolerance nice and low. Bake to control rig. And now the animation's disabled. And this animation is now happening via the control rig. And so this is, let's see if I can select a piece of that. Tap F to fit. So if we look at the control rig now, you'll actually see the controls on that rig moving as he speaks, right? And so now if I want to do things like adjust some of that animation, so for example, this control rig, these keys, these are all the key frames that Faceware recorded. Now, some of those are all zeros. So what I can do is add what's called another section. So I'm going to add a section. It's going to be additive. And now you can see I have this original section. This is the part that Faceware recorded and has all these movements already on it. This one has nothing in it yet. So if I find the part in this animation where I say, here's the U, this you, right here is you should try this. And I want to get the sticky lips to work on that. I can apply that right here. So I'll go to the beginning of that and I'll set keyframes for sticky lips, for example, find those. Go for mouth sticky, there it is. This is up and down, left and right. That's the one I want. There we go. So there's one sticky. And I'll set a keyframe for that. And here's another sticky. I'll set a keyframe for that. There we go. Trying to find that keyframe. This is the one I'm trying to find. I can't find its name though. Let's just search this for sticky. There we go. These are the controls I want. All right, so set a keyframe here, set a keyframe here. This is where it started out, right? So there's no offset. And I'll move to the end of the word you. And I'll do the same thing again. I'll set keyframes for these at 0. But now right here in the middle of the word you, I'm going to go ahead and key these. There we go, a little bit sticky. Key that. It's already keyed, very good. And this one. And there we go. And now we have those keys. And so now I've added that sticky lip motion to the word you. And so this is how you go in and you enhance what's going on. And so, you know, I'm used to calling these animation layers in Unreal. They're called sections. And so you have the one section that was written to by Faceware Studio. And then you have your second section, which is your additives or your overrides to adjust that. But there you go. So this is how you can really dramatically enhance these animations and make them look, you know, really leverage all that Faceware Studio, or I'm sorry, MetaHumans has to offer. All right, there we go. And that is our demo for the day. Cool.
At any point, would you ever drop the animation data onto the face rig first before putting it on the actual MetaHuman head, so that you could exaggerate certain facial positions?
So, I mean, if you needed to exaggerate anything, you could do that with either the functions or motion effects in here.
Yeah.
So then they would go in, you know, and whatever exaggerations you see on here are ultimately going to be reflected in here. So I basically view Take Recorder as being the tool that like just essentially records that feed from Faceware Studio and applies it. And then I'll bake that to the rig, so then I can, you know, continue animating with the rig from there.
Right. I went to the Faceware support and I downloaded the 3 rigs, one for Mobo, one for 3ds Max, one for Maya, and then the award-winning animation of, I think it's Emily, maybe.
So the 3D Max and the Maya plugins, aren't those for retargeter though?
Maybe. I'm glad I asked. So you can actually.
Yeah, I think Faceware Studio. There's basically 2 live clients. There's one for Unity and one for Motion Builder.
That's not the same site I went to. Okay, let me go visit that one. Faceware Studio. Okay.
And the website's Faceware Tech.
Okay.
So yeah, I would definitely like practice this, you know, and again, you could use any of the MetaHumans, any of the pre-built ones, or you could create your custom one. The Take Recorder can be a little finicky. You don't have to deselect all those things that I did. You know, you could leave the default, but when you do that, what ends up happening is the Take Recorder is going to record everything and it'll spawn and everything. But I think the last time I recorded before this demo, I probably left it set to the defaults, and I think it actually worked better.
Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Yeah, thanks.
I appreciate it.
I think that's good place to wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I so to shed your info in the chat here, I'll share it again in the group. And yeah, appreciate you being here, and wish you all the best with the fellowship. Yeah, look forward to hearing all of the good stuff that comes from it.
I guess. Yeah, the one other note, I guess, is you know, they're on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Los Angeles time. There's this guy, Alex Lindsay, that runs something called Office Hours. He runs this thing every single day at 7 a.m. Pacific time. But Saturdays at 10 a.m., we've been sitting down and just focusing on Unreal Engine. And so it's just a live Zoom meeting video chat. So all of you guys are welcome. Ed's joined a couple times. So, if you're awake at that time, I know it's probably not too bad in the UK.
That'd be 5 p.m. ish or 6 p.m.
Yeah, there you go. Depends on what you're doing on a Saturday. Feel free to join in on those conversations. I posted about it in the CG Pro Facebook group, so you can use that. We'll see. We're definitely doing it again this coming week. We'll see if I still have the bandwidth to join it myself during the rest of the fellowship. I might take a break from it if the fellowship is too much and let my Saturdays actually get some life done. But even if I take a break from it, I'll be back as soon as the fellowship finished. And those conversations are going on all the time. So anyway, there you go. There's another plug.
Yeah, those are cool. Those sessions, definitely recommend them.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thanks again, Nick. I appreciate it.
Take care.
And,
See ya.
cheers for joining us, guys.
No, it's a pleasure. Cheers. See you later.
You're welcome.